I rented the stained glass studio till sunrise. What the heat spelled in color. I didn't rent the stained glass studio because I needed a new window. I rented it because heat tells the truth when language gets careful, and I wanted a room where our mouths weren't the only furnaces. The studio sits above a bakery, the kind of place that's polite at noon and honest at 4 a.m. I once helped the owner, Beatrice, rewire a kiln controller with a schematic and stubbornness. She paid me with trust and a ring of keys that rattle like good intentions. When I texted close to midnight, she wrote back, "Bench 3 is yours. Kiln's warm, annealer at 500. Don't blow on the glass." And learned the hard way, no trials after 2. I promised to leave the fans pointed the way I found them. At 11:39 p.m., my phone produced the sentence my marriage can issue without a drafts folder. Loadout ran late. Quick debrief turned into a drink, might crash at the office. Don't wait up. Sienna doesn't lie. She convinces logistics to pretend to be Grace. She can put a donor back into their seat with one eyebrow and talk a forklift into acting like a gentleman. We have been excellent at mercy and thrifty with appetite. The person who made that ledger dangerous is predictable. The operations lead with gaffer in his tote and steadiness in his wrists. His name is Luca. He stands exactly one respectful step from married women, as if a city ordinance drafted him. In daylight, I admire him. After dark, my neck files a dissent. I opened the studio door, and the room exhaled hot sugar and lead, the way craft does when it knows your palms will remember something before your head does. Sheets of glass leaned like sleeping flags against the wall. Emerald, ultramarine. A red so arrogant it felt like gossip. The kiln ticked with the modest authority of things that can ruin your day if you don't listen. I set 2 paper cups on the marver and watched heat thread itself through the hour. They came up the bakery stairs at 12:06, the bell over the downstairs door apologizing for being so useful. Sienna first, hair pinned in the shape competence requires, heels in her hand because competence learned how to be barefoot. Luca behind her, sleeves shoved, toed at his hip, eyes doing the perimeter math men who lift after midnight teach themselves so they survive reputations without collecting new ones. He saw me first, good men always do, and stopped one respectful step inside the threshold, palms open like pockets that won't steal. "A glass studio," Sienna said, smiling with one side of her mouth. "That's dangerously poetic even for you." "I needed a room where heat notices," I said. "Say it where the kiln can hear." Luca looked at the annealer like it had jurisdiction. "Need me?" he asked her, not me. "I need you exactly there," she said, pointing to the tape square by the door. "If I want less distance, I'll use your name." He obeyed. Good men do. It keeps cities functioning and husbands honest. "Say it," I told Sienna. "In an elevator," she said, because fate syndicates its cheapest scripts. 2 weeks ago, between floors and nouns, I kissed him quick, mint, rehearsal. He stepped back. He said my name like a lock. I almost hated him for being who he needs to be. I almost hated me for liking that he was. Tonight I nearly followed the part of me that loves doors. I came here. "Do you want me to hit him?" I asked, already ashamed of how tempting the role sounded. "I want you to choose me," she said. "Not rescue, appetite." I pulled on a pair of Kevlar sleeves and handed her the other. "Help me pull," I said, lifting a rod with a gather the size of a small confession at its end. The glass glowed that impossible honeyed orange that makes patience taste like candy. Sienna took the jacks and set their cool steel to the heat. The gather opened with a breath like good decisions made too late. We turned, stepped together, listening for the soft complaint glass makes when it is honest. "Invite me when you're interesting," I said, "not just when danger pretends to be charm." "I am inviting you," she said, and looked at my mouth like an address. I set the rod on the steel and kissed her. Jurisdiction, not apology, quick, precise, a punctuation mark forged in a furnace. She answered like a woman who'd been a plan for 12 hours and wanted 4 minutes where verbs remembered themselves. My hand slid along her ribs to the place where fabric enforces daylight. I stopped because I like the man who opens our curtains. She took my lower lip gently, briefly, and laughed into my cheek, the laugh that rescued our Februaries. We kept our clothes. We kept our life. We made heat that could walk out through a bakery without borrowing grace. I turned the rod, listening for gravity. She opened the lip with a practiced gesture that had nothing to do with art and everything to do with tenderness. We sheared the piece, laid it in the annealer, and closed the door on its cooling like parents functioning without an audience. Luca cleared his throat in the polite key that keeps vans on time and rumors in remission. "Loadin' at 9, he said to the floor. 4 backs, 0 speeches. "Coffee at 9, I said, which meant thank you for stepping back and also please keep being someone I'm not required to forgive. He didn't move. He made himself into furniture that held. "Tell me the worst thing you almost did," Sienna said. "I sat in a motel parking lot with a key I didn't ask for," I said. "Watched a brass number try to become a future. Laughed myself home when even my worst idea preferred daylight." "I almost sent you proof," she said. "Screenshots, stamps. I almost rented righteousness by the hour. I deleted drafts and ordered water in a lobby until my mouth remembered yours." I gathered again. We rolled the glass on the Marver until it sang that soft, wet hymn. "Do something foolish," she said, "but survivable." I handed her a grease pencil. She wrote along the inside of her wrist in tiny letters for the Mirror later, "Appetite, not theater." I took the pencil and wrote small where the Marver table won't be wiped clean. "Choose before the elevator does." I kissed the ink dry. The heat approved. We worked because motion is how some confessions behave. A cylinder this time, long and modest. We stretched and corrected and conceded and believed. Sweat ran down her spine. I pretended science needed me to touch the spot where fabric clung to skin so I could think again. She made that small, unpublic sound that sets my ribs to their original factory settings. "Do you still want to hit him?" she asked. "I want to thank him for stepping back," I said, "and I want to owe him nothing else." "That will feed me," she said. We moved to the cold bench and watched the last pieces glow fall a shade toward human. I told her small truths, that I count ladder rungs when I'm scared, that I love the sound of a finished seam, that I am tired of being good and ready to be generous. She told me small truths, that her shoulder locks when a room makes her into a system, that she wants my hand at the back of her neck under fluorescence, that she hates how competence looks better on paper than appetite feels in a kitchen. Downstairs, someone turned trays of dough into small proofs of mourning. Butter negotiated with air. The smell came up like a bribe we could afford to accept. We set the tools down and let the bench be quiet. The clock over the annealer coughed a minute forward. "Tell me if we're ridiculous," she said. "Absolutely," I said, "and correct." Luca stood at the tape like a man who understands not all exits are door-shaped. "If I'm in the way," he said, "say so and I'll become a hallway." "You're a hallway," I said. "At 9 you're a van." He nodded once, employment and decency signing treaties. We kissed again, brief, deliberate, a future tense we could lift. I opened the annealer and slid the new work in. The door thunked with the forgiveness of a good machine. We wiped down steel, hung the sleeves, moved our cups to the sink like accomplices with manners. The stairs down smelled like butter confessing nothing. We stood in the narrow hallway and practiced turning tomorrow into prose. She touched my wrist, daylight legal, and the little instrument behind my ribs found the right pitch. We made one plan. Breakfast in an hour at the bakery we were already in the attic of, then a morning of lifting what didn't ask to be lifted and laughing at nothing we could quote later. At 9, the community center smelled like lemon spelling competence. Luca was already stacking tables with the modest inevitability that teaches gravity manners. I carried the other end and let sunlight hire my back. Sienna moved through the room with a clipboard, and a mouth volunteers obey without hatting themselves. When she passed me, she tapped the ink on her wrist, and the morning picked our side without speeches. During break, I set a coffee by Luca's elbow. "Thank you," I said, "for being the adult in the elevator." "Thank you," he said, "for booking a room where heat doesn't gossip." He looked at the doorway with professional affection. We loaded the van without theater. Tape squealed, a case complained and forgave itself, a list sighed with relief. Gravity agreed to be negotiated for one more day. We didn't tell anyone about the studio. We taped a shard of cullet, green gone wholly, to the side of our fridge under the magnet shaped like the ridiculous boat we bought one summer we didn't ruin. Sometimes when the house auditions for courtroom, we switch off the big light and hold a phone light at counter height until the scratches light up and we remember who made them and why. Sometimes she texts come and mean stand next to me while I bend a room into competence and beauty. Sometimes I text come and mean watch me be a body before I become a plan. Sometimes we take a friend who thinks proof is love and show them a UV lamp so they can watch old lies bloom blue while something truer waits its turn. We didn't stop admiring other people's competence. We did stop confusing it with permission. Heat is a temperature, not a verdict. Glass is a witness that burns until you decide what shape to cool it in. We eat before we try to win. We sleep when the clock loses its manners. We put our hands on each other in daylight like the sun still issues licenses. And when the gossip part of the city asks whether we have anything to add, we say we rented a room where furnaces spell words we prefer not to waste, kissed under heat that keeps receipts, wrote small where a rag won't find it, choose before the elevator does, appetite not theater, and left before 2 because that's the law now. Return the keys. Turn the fans the way you found them. Let the annealer do its quiet miracle, while we walk downstairs to butter, and the kind of morning that lets our mouth stay hungry.